Let me welcome Arnel Sancianco. Hello.
Hello, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I am great.
Great. So Arnel, this video is all about, and this series is all about our dream projects. As designers and directors don't often get to ask or be asked, "What is your dream project?" And so I thought, how great would it be for us to ask a set designer, "What is your dream project?" And so I am so curious, what is your dream project?
My dream project is Eurydice by Sarah Rule. It's this adaptation of a Greek myth uh, called Orpheus and Eurydice. And if those names sound familiar, it's because it's the same myth that Hades Town is based off of. But Sarah Rule's version tells the story of this woman named Eurydice who falls in love with this musician. And on her wedding day, she's approached by this interesting man with a letter from her father. So she leaves her wedding to go try and get this letter from this interesting man. And through an altercation, she ends up dying on her wedding day. She actually falls to her death. And she arrives in the underworld where she's met by this Greek chorus called the Stones. And lo and behold, as if by fate, her father is there. And so she spends a lot of this time in the underworld rekindling this love with her father. Meanwhile, her husband is searching the world, trying to find her, trying to get into the underworld. And by the end of the play, which I'm not going to spoil, but she has to make this really hard decision. Do I stay in the underworld with the father that I never knew, or do I live the rest of my mortality with my husband, who I just married? It's a play that's always stuck with me. It's always haunted me since the first time I designed it. I spent a lot of time in grad school during my winter and spring breaks, actually either in San Diego or in Asia. I actually did a lot of trips. I visited at the time my husband. Now, back then he was my boyfriend. I visited him in Korea where he was teaching English, and and there was something about feeling foreign in a country that people I always identify me as. Like in the United States, I'm just Asian. But then to go to Asia, like Korea or the Philippines or Japan, to just feel like a foreigner in my own home. And every time I felt that sort of foreign feeling, this play would like scream at me in the back of my head, being like, remember Eurydice. Because there's that element of Eurydice going into the underworld and feeling lost. And when I went back to the Philippines, or when I went to Japan, I just felt completely foreign, which was weird because then I'd come back to the United States and then I still feel foreign. You know, I was a foreigner here and I was a foreigner there, and it's sort of that feeling that I feel Eurydice feels like throughout this play. This version of Eurydice is set in this all-white train station, and that came from a particular memory of me and my husband in Seoul, and we were waiting for a train. It was like midnight, and we were waiting for this train to arrive, and it was just the two of us in this all-white station, and it's clean. Korean train stations, Korean subway stations are just pristinely clean, and it was quiet, and it just felt very ghostly and ghost-like. And I remember in the distance, you could hear the jingle. And if you ever have free time, we all have free time now. You should look up Korean train jingles because they're the most beautiful jingles. Like here in Chicago, it's just like doors open on the left, but over there, it's like this beautiful chime, and you could hear it in the distance. And it just gets louder and louder and louder, and then the train arrives. And so that ghostly purgatory feeling of waiting for your chariot to arrive just felt so haunting to me that I thought, oh my gosh, again, the voice in the back of my head screaming, hey, remember Eurydice, remember Eurydice. I thought, okay, I have to do this play. I have to design this for my thesis. And so that's what I pulled into this version, was that ghostly feeling.
this play, as you read it, is one of those plays that's really defined by the technical elements. At least I find one of
Mhm.
those things is, for example, an elevator, the use of water. There are characters who are representing like they are stones. I'm wondering how you sort of connected with those things or how those came into your project.
This project was sort of a revisit of an old project that I had done in undergrad. And so there were a lot of things that I wanted to change from that version to this version and just sort of heighten those elements in Sarah Rule's writing. One of the major elements there was this elevator. Sarah Rule writes that Eurydice arrives into the underworld in this elevator full of rain. And in this design, I wanted to hide the elevator. The first time I did it, this elevator was this beautiful Art Deco elevator. It was in the middle of the stage. And the design sort of became this play about an elevator. In this version, I wanted the elevator to appear from these white subway tiles, and that it rises from the floor. So it's a sort of ascension into the underworld. And then as Eurydice steps off the elevator with all the rain falling on her, the elevator disappears into the white subway tile.
I remember seeing this model box in person, and one of the things that I found most striking wasn't just the model box, but also the way you organized your ideas and your feelings about the play in sort of um, a program of sorts that was sort of, for me, it looked a lot like a subway map. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I had created this timeline that helped me organize my thoughts. That just, first of all, just like lays out every scene. It's, you know, if I ever took this play to tech, it would be great to just like have this at my desk and be like, what scene am I at? But also just using very graphic icons to just indicate, you know, where does the interesting man show up? Where does Sarah Rule write? She calls them the first movement, second movement, third movement, because it's, you know, Orpheus is a musician, so she sort of
Right.
writes it like music. And then I have like this little light blue line that just, to me, was just this very slow, it felt like a violin pull or like a cello pull. I think that's actually more more uh, more interesting, right? This that someone is pulling the bow on this cello, and then at one point they change directions and then continue the pull, and then change directions and then continue the pull. And so trying to pinpoint where in the play does that cello change directions, or sorry, the bow change directions, or change notes, or change octaves. Um, and then on the top, I kept these, what is it here? I think it's just seven images that just remind me of this play. So if I'm ever lost, I could just sit there and be like, okay, that's right. That's what this play is.
Is there anyone who you'd like to collaborate on this project with?
There are three amazing costume designers that I would love to work with. Um, uh, Christine Pasquale, Izumi Inaba, and Melissa Ning. Actually, I think all three of them did shows at Milwaukee Rep at one point. So these audiences are well aware of their work. But I think, you know, working with any of those three Asian designers would really help me just bring to life the fashion of this story. Because I think I don't think we mentioned this, but I think that what's beautiful about this version is that it's an almost all Asian cast, with the exception of Orpheus. And seeing these Asian fashion, but also seeing the appropriation of traditional Asian culture, especially with the stones, to start them off as these beautiful geisha women, but as the story progresses, to see them become these appropriations of that culture. I think one key element of this play, for me, at least in this production, is, you know, it's not just picking your father and picking your husband, it's picking your culture and picking the world you identify with. there's this beautiful scene where Eurydice, when she comes to the underworld, she doesn't know the language of the underworld. And there's this beautiful moment where she's sitting with her father in this string house. Again, another magical element that Sarah Rule writes. She's sitting with her father, and he's teaching her the language of the underworld. And that was something that I never got to have. I understand Tagalog, which is the Filipino language, but I don't know how to speak it. And Eurydice has this beautiful moment where she gets to learn the language. And I think having an Asian collaborator who understands that relationship, the relationship of choosing your language or choosing a way to assimilate, makes this, adds this extra depth to this story. This weird in between that I think specifically first generation immigrants like myself feel. I was born here, and so I had to join the melting pot. I had to lose some of my flavor to join the rest of this flavor. And I think by telling these stories, we sort of push away from this metaphor of the melting pot, and we embrace this this metaphor of the salad bowl, right? That you bring elements to the course that don't eliminate your identity, they just add to the whole well-being of the culture. I'm hoping that stories like this and retellings of myths in through these lenses diversify theater and diversify the community and diversify storytelling and then diversify storytellers.